Hello everybody and welcome to Dungeons & Drams. Today we're going to be talking about fantastical landscapes. I find that it is one of the best ways to world build, for me personally, to feel inspired by a concept that I've come up with just from nowhere. Especially if it kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense and it feels really magical. That's something that I personally struggle with a little bit, is making something feel magical. I feel like my brain is too locked into the reality of the world, so I'm going to use ChatGPT to help expand my concepts here. So what we're going to do is we're going to generate 10 different biomes. We're going to roll a d10, and then I'm going to take that one. We're going to expand upon this. We're going to make a location. We're going to make it unique. We're going to make some descriptive text that you can read off to your players if you want, and it's going to be awesome. So here's what we're going to start with. This is your initial prompt. I am a dungeon master running Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I am world building and need to come up with 10 unique biomes or settings. I'd like a blurb highlighting how each is special and unique. Now here was an important piece. Avoid known cliches and consider absolutely unique options that make no actual sense. That is something I want to put. But I'm actually going to expand upon this. I'm going to say something to the effect of "and seem magical." While this is generating, something that comes to mind when I'm thinking about world building is, what have I heard in podcasts or read in books that really sticks out to me? You know, like if you picture the Black Gates, let's just say from Lord of the Rings, it is not out of the realm of possibility to think, oh, there's like a huge bastion and it's got these huge gates. But then when you think about the way it was portrayed in the movies, and like the trolls are opening the doors and people are kind of marching through and it's surrounded by these crags, paints a way better visual. Now there's another podcast from the Dungeon Cast that some of you might have listened to called Super Quest Saga. And there was this one location that they had where the entire planet that they visited was made of crystal, and there were animals there that were encased in crystal, and it's just something that paints a very vivid memory. And I've thought about what makes it memorable. Now, a lot of it has to do with the description. You want a description that is not too long, but also descriptive enough that you can picture it, but you also want to interject multiple times with your descriptions. So although this is creating fantasy landscapes, I'm trying to help you to run your game as well. And when you are describing these locations, do it frequently, but also leave things open to people's mind to kind of fill in the blanks too. You don't want to be overly specific because then people tune it out. You want to make their brain work to create the missing pieces, because that's going to solidify it in their brain. All right, so here are the 10 that we're going to pick from. I'll just read the titles and then we will roll for this. So we've got the Glimmering Geode Grove, Whispering Wind Canyons, Suspended Sky Isles, Infinite Mirage Desert, Harmonious Honeycomb Hills, Veil of Vertical Oceans. That's I actually kind of read that. Gigantic walls of water stretched towards the sky, held by an invisible force. That's really cool. Twilight Tanglewood, Mirrored Mountain Meadows, Temporal Tidal Pools, and Labyrinthian Lantern Lands. Now, the only one here that really, the Suspended Sky Isles, that's a little cliche, but out of 10 of them, I think this did a pretty good job of coming up with things that are like a little bit unique. So let's see what we roll. 6 is the Veil of Vertical Oceans. Wow, that's convenient. I actually am happy about that because that one sounded the most interesting to me. All right, so let's read this. Gigantic walls of water stretch toward the sky, held by an invisible force. Travelers navigate through the liquid walls, discovering floating sea life and hidden treasures. Pockets of air serve as underwater islands, and ancient shipwrecks defy gravity, sailing between the vertical oceans. Now, this is weird. All right, so let's try to picture this, because even by that, I'm finding it a little hard to picture. So let's do this. I'm going to tell it that I would like it to describe it as if it was a dungeon master describing the scene to its players. Prompt is exactly that. Could you describe scene number 6 as if you were a dungeon master explaining it to your players? So if I were a DM reading this, I would break this up, but I will read the first 2 paragraphs. So, as your party approaches the edge of the mysterious land known as the Veil of Vertical Oceans, you are greeted by the astonishing sight of colossal walls of water, reaching high into the sky as if defying the very laws of nature. The walls of water shimmering under the sunlight are held together by an unseen magical force, creating a labyrinth of aquatic pathways and corridors. You notice a plethora of sea life floating within the vertical confines of the watery walls. Schools of luminescent fish dart between the currents, and you catch a glimpse of a gargantuan sea creature's shadow, moving slowly in the deeper parts of the oceanic veil. The air is filled with the gentle sound of moving water and the faint echo of whale songs. So, I don't love this. We're doing this together. I don't love this as a thing I would read as a DM. I think it's a little too slow. So I'm going to take that under advisement and I'm going to tell it to correct itself. So let's try this. All right, so I've set a constraint, but I also told it what my reasoning was. So I say, could you describe this area quicker? I want to paint the picture of the location, then give the players time to visualize it themselves. This should only be 1 paragraph. Now, by giving it a limit of how much to type, it's going to change things around quite a bit, and I think it's going to use some more potent words, but let's see. Before you lies the mesmerizing expanse of the Vale of Vertical Oceans, where towering walls of shimmering water defy gravity suspended by unseen magic. Within these liquid walls, luminescent sea life flits about, and the shadowy silhouette of colossal sea creatures loom in the depths. Pause. That's where you should pause if you are reading this as a DM. Give them a minute to react, because they're going to be like, oh crap, there's huge stuff in there. We're screwed, we're all going to die. You know how your players are. But then give them a minute and then come back into it. Pockets of air form floating islands amidst the aquatic labyrinth with ancient gravity-defying shipwrecks hinting at treasures and perils. The air is misty and salty with refracted... So I would actually pause right before this part. So when I describe this, I like to be like, this is what you're looking at. And then here's a couple of details. Here's something to intrigue you. This is the pirate ship. Nobody's going to see a sunken ship and not think, I would like to go look at that to find some treasure. That is a thing that we are hardwired to do. So cool. Now, one of the other things that you really want to do with the location is think of the senses, right? This is not a new concept, but it is something important to remember. What does it smell like? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it taste like if you can? And then what does it feel like? So this is that last part of the paragraph. The air is misty and salty with refracted light, painting a kaleidoscope of... That's a little meh, but I would reword this a little bit, but this still gives you a good idea. The air is misty and salty with refracted light, painting a kaleidoscope of colors across the landscape, inviting you into the mysterious allure of this enchanting vertical underwater world. See, I would leave that out completely because I'm not writing a book. I want to say the air here is misty and salty, and you could hear the rushing water as the sea climbs into the air or something like that. So consider this, but this is all inspiration. I'm not expecting, unless I'm really pressed for it, I'm not going to type something into ChatGPT and then read it verbatim. I like to use ChatGPT as a modifier or something to really to punch up what I already have in mind, or as a way to ideate. I don't take it verbatim and then use it verbatim, because that's I may as well just write a book, right? So, I have, but it's very rare. So anyway, from here, what you want to do is think about, you've got this grand picture, but there's no detail. There's pirate ships, sure. So let's say, let's have it describe, what is it like when you move through this wall? Does your gravity change, or do you just walk straight into it? So let's find out. What is the sensation that the players feel when they enter this vertical ocean? One thing that I think would be a good idea is to tell ChatGPT to be a little bit more succinct. And I'll do that in kind of the next prompt, but it does seem to be a bit lengthy. But this is also still good when you are ideating, because you're reading this, you're painting this mental picture, which will then let you relay it to your players. So basically it says you walk through the water and you feel weightlessness. Duh, you're underwater. And it's akin to entering a dream. I'd leave that out. The boundaries between air and water blur, and you feel a gentle buoyancy, allowing you to move with an otherworldly grace through the liquid corridors. So I'm starting to get the impression that not only is this not just I was originally picturing it as a flat plain ocean just right in front of me, but I think this is more think almost like water spouts, but larger. So there's these vertical pieces of ocean that maybe you can even get through if you wanted to. So this is starting to paint a little bit better picture by just reading through this. So now that I've kind of got this in my mind, I want to go back and I want to roll on that table again. But before I do, something that you could do here is utilize some of the previous videos I've made. I've helped you create monsters. I've helped you create plants. And if you're going to be underwater, you're going to need some plants, right? You could also tell it to define that pirate ship. I want to get more into one of these, but I don't really love this location after discovering more about it. So I want to go roll on a table and do another one. All right, so we have 2, which I like this one a lot more. Whispering Wind Canyons. Deep canyons where the winds carry voices from the past. The air currents act as temporal streams carrying sounds and whispers from different eras. Echoes of ancient civilizations and future societies blend in a symphony of stories. The rocks themselves seem to listen, occasionally shifting to reveal hidden pathways. This sounds awesome. I don't think this is like the most novel concept, but I do like it as a location. Actually, you could totally just have this, you know, your adventurers have to make their way through a mountainous region and you don't feel like just skipping overland travel. So make them roll on it, you know, and if they roll whatever, then this location shows up. They're walking through the mountains and you find, you know, you start hearing these whispered things. But let's let ChatGPT tell us what this looks like and sounds like. We're going to use the same prompt that we used before. Could you describe scene number, in this case, 2, as if you were a dungeon master explaining it to your players? So I'm actually going to change the prompt a little bit because, again, it kind of gave a huge location description, which is fine to read, but not really if I'm playing a game. Not only that, unless you're going to be reading off a piece of paper, you'd have to memorize a lot of this. That's not going to happen. So I changed it. I added, remember to be succinct, as I said I would. This is meant to give them a view of the location, not all of the detail about it. So let's try that. I can always ask it for more detail. So this actually gives a little bit more detail than I would want to if the players were coming upon this location, didn't really know about it. If they were seeking it out, maybe they're trying to find some information that was long lost and they're going to the Whispering Wind Canyons to try to hear somebody from the past tell them about something that they need. But it says, before you sprawls the vast expanse of Whispering Wind Canyons, a network of deep crevices where the air itself carries the echoes of the ages. The gusts of wind meander through the canyons like living streams, whispering tales of ancient civilizations and murmurs of futures unknown. So that's great. It does say like the walls are sentient and they're shifting subtly to reveal hidden pathways or conceal secrets. So that's not something I would say right away. That would be like, make an investigation check. And as you check out the wall, you notice it's actually seems to be moving a little bit, just slowly. But then behind you, you see the wall moves fast and all of a sudden there's a pathway that wasn't there before. Like, this is now giving me an idea that I could just riff off of, and that's really cool. And who's not going to check that out, you know? But they're going to be a little worried to go in there. It's a giant rock. Like, what if it slides back and just crushes them? So let's continue on. We're going to actually dig into this one. So we have this location. I want to know more. What does the rock actually look like? So if I want to describe this, if they ask for a perception check, I am not going to say like, oh, I guess it's like a gray rock, you know, like I want to know more. You know, we've got this whole time stream going on. Maybe there's striations in the rock that kind of mimic the flow of these wind gusts that are, you know, maybe like higher up or lower. It's like different sizes, something that we could do with that. But let's jump into this. So this one I'm just making up. So can you describe the rock for me? Color, consistency, sound as it moves, any detail you want to include. That's not a thing I would like put in the description. That's just something I'm curious about. So the rock formations of the Whispering Wind Canyons are a myriad of colors ranging from deep purples to warm ochres, interspersed with veins of iridescent minerals that shimmer in the light. The rocks have an unusual, almost malleable consistency, bending and shifting under the force of the winds like ancient blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's cool. I can reread that later, like on my own time, or you can, you know, zoom in and read it if you want. But this is something that I can now use to help formulate this thought in my head. What does this place look like? Let's do something else because we're playing D&D. Let's make some perception rolls. So not only am I going to use perception because I'm going to kind of teach it what I'm thinking about, but I'm also going to tell it to use other stuff. So you'll see. My players want to roll a perception check on this location. This is something I could type if I was doing this like in the moment while my players are talking and I'm like, crap, I don't know what to do. I could be like, they're going to roll perception. Could you come up with a list of 5 different details to give them based upon their rolls? The lowest being a 5 and the highest being anything over a 23. Now, I like this because, you know, it's a pretty good range. I don't love when somebody rolls like a 4 or a 5 and you're just like, it's a canyon, you know, like that can be funny sometimes, but I don't love doing it all the time. But also, you know, if they roll a 5 and you give them something, that makes them think, oh, you know what, maybe this isn't like that hard to figure out. You know, somebody else might jump in too, but you didn't give them nothing. It's the whole fail forward thing, right? Now, of course, if they roll a 1, like, yes, it's a canyon, but a 5 should get you a little something. You're not blind, right? So Add other types of results if the players want to use some of their other skills to observe or learn about this location. Now, this opens up ChatGPT to use things like history. This is a known location. Survival. Maybe you spot some animal tracks leading into a solid wall because maybe some animal went through a hidden track, and that could let you know that there are these hidden doors. Anything else, Arcana, of course, like, you detect the voice of whatever on the wind and you realize it's an enchantment or anything like that. So this thing is kicking out a lot of different skills, which is awesome. That's exactly what I wanted. So with a perception check, I'm actually just kind of going to go through these because this will help me as the DM to know what is going on here too. So with a 5, the shifting rocks and the murmuring winds create an eerie ambience, but the specific details elude your notice. Leave out that last bit. I'd be like, you notice the shifting rocks and the murmuring winds, they're creating like this creepy feeling and you're feeling like something's off, with a 10, you notice the rocks subtly changing shapes, creating new pathways and revealing hidden crevices, some of which glint with the hint of concealed treasures. And that pretty much speaks for itself. I think that's written perfectly. 15, the whispers become clearer and you can discern fragments of ancient tales and cryptic messages that hint at the history of long forgotten civilizations and the presence of hidden chambers within the canyon walls. Now, we will ask it to give us some of these things that you could be hearing because, if you're making this up on the fly, maybe one of your players couldn't make it tonight and you needed to make this place up in a really quick. And this goes back, actually, I realize I'm rambling a little bit tonight, but this is like an exciting topic for me and it's one that you could really get into. So something to consider is that if you keep the same thread open in ChatGPT where you have been developing your world or a city or whatever, as you ask it questions like this, it will utilize some of that knowledge from your previous questions. I've done this with some of the cities that I've done on this channel before. There was a Elven city that we developed a little while ago, and I remember using that again to be like, hey, generate me some NPCs that live here. And it went back and it was like, oh, this location has these kind of NPCs, so here you go. Anyway, so with a 20, the iridescent veins in the rock catches your eye, and you realize they form a complex pattern, almost like a map or a set of ancient runes, hinting at powerful ley lines coursing through the canyons. That's pretty cool. Maybe you start to discern how these caves start showing up. 23 plus, the combination of shifting rocks and harmonious whispers guide your senses to a concealed entrance, behind which you sense a strong presence of ancient magic and the faint heartbeat of a slumbering entity. Okay, that is very interesting. I'm actually starting to really like this location. My players are heading into the mountains. Maybe this will make a showing in my campaign. Investigation check, 15 plus. So I like this because it didn't just do the 5 through 23 again. This is now getting a little harder because I would have asked them for a perception check, but now if like one of the other players is like, hey, you know what? That was fine. Like they learned about whatever, like they saw the glinting. I'd like to make an investigation check to see more. Investigating the patterns on the rocks, you uncover the remnants of ancient inscriptions, revealing that the canyons were once a sacred meeting place for powerful elemental druids who could command the winds and stones. Okay, so now I'm starting to ask myself, so what happened to these druids where the winds are still blowing? And maybe we could find that out. Nature check, you sense the natural ebb and flow of elemental energies within the rocks and winds, indicating that the canyons are alive with the ancient spirit of earth and air, possibly allowing communication with elemental entities. Okay, so now this is definitely starting to lean less like a random arcana thing and maybe something more to do with elements. Maybe there's a portal to an elemental plane in this location. Arcana check, the ley lines and ancient magic resonate with arcane energy. You realize that the whispers are not just remnants of the past, but also a form of divination, potentially allowing glimpses into future events or distant locations. Very cool. So if you roll high enough on Arcana, you don't just hear the past, maybe you could hear the future. History check, last one, 18 plus, recalling ancient texts and legends, you piece together the history of the Whispering Wind Canyons as a place of prophecy, where kings and wise men would seek guidance from the voices of the wind, and where ancient pacts were sealed with elemental beings. Okay, so that's really cool, and that gives me an idea. So you're in this Whispering Winds area. It's already hinted that there is some elemental factor here. Now I'm starting to think, and this just came to me, it just talked about how these kings would seek guidance, blah, 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 and then make ancient pacts where they were sealed with elemental beings. What if there's like earth elementals or air elementals hanging around, and when you kill them, you learn something? And maybe you have to kill a couple of these in order to learn some lore about your world. Or as you kill this air elemental, the wind blows the specific words that the king had made this pact with, and maybe you learn some deep dark secret, right? I like that a lot. So let's just for ambiance, let's ask it what kind of messages you would hear on the wind, especially if you're mentioning us. Somebody's going to be like, I'd like to listen and see what I could hear. What are some messages that the players could hear on the wind? So this came out pretty cool. It gives prophecies, it gives warnings, it gives a little bit of lore, some riddles, a secret path, some knowledge, message, etc., etc. So when the celestial, let's go with beware the shadowed serpent lurking beneath the shifting stones. Its gaze pierces souls. Its venom turns allies to foes. So it's a little bit of a rhyme. I like that. But also that might explain what that heavy breathing that you heard was. Or maybe something about this giant serpent is actually what makes the stones shift. And then you've got personal message. Traveler with a burdened heart. The winds have seen your path. Trust the journey, embrace the unknown, and find what you seek at last. I mean, that's fine, but you could really make it say anything. Just the idea that this is giving you, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 different types of messages that could be on the wind. Now you as the DM get to incorporate your players a bit and maybe their backstory, or maybe something that will happen to them in the future if you're really that good. But you could make it say whatever you want. You could have it be a riddle. You could have it be history. You could be anything that you want. This location is awesome. So what kind of enemies are here? We already know that there's going to be elementals, but I'm curious what else. Maybe there's a basilisk. Maybe there's just, I don't know, spider. Who knows? So stone serpents makes sense, and we could go ahead and generate stat blocks for any one of these. I've talked about that in a previous video, so go check that out if you'd like. Stone serpents, wind wraiths, elemental golems, temporal phantoms, spectral raptors. Oh, birds of prey. Okay, I was thinking dinosaurs. Too bad. Whispering winds, luminescent floating entities that emit alluring whispers, leading travelers off the path into traps. Or so we've got will-o'-the-wisps, basically. I like that. Canyon crawlers. Multi-legged creatures camouflage against the canyon walls, ambushing adventurers. Nice. Veiled sirens, rockslide revenants, and arrow elementals. Okay, cool. So all of that makes perfect sense. So I've got this location. I know what it's for. I've got some ideas of how to use it. I know what kind of creatures might be here. What else do I need? I need history, because this location has existed for a very long time, but I don't know as the DM what caused this location to be the way it is. And maybe I don't care to know, but I do. Me personally, Bill, cares. So let's find out. Tell me about the history of this location. I'd like to know why the wind blows the way it does and how this area became enchanted. I'm not going to read this whole thing only because you may or may not care, but it's on the screen if you want to pause. So long story short, there was a stone from the elemental plane of air and one from the elemental plane of earth. And these were presented as gifts to some druids. The druids then basically put them into the earth, and then the whole place became magical. And the little blurb here reads way cooler than that. So I would encourage you to pause it and read it if you'd like to, but either way. So this is pretty cool. I hope that you'd consider using this tool to help you to ideate on the locations within your world. You have really cool ideas, and it's very easy to seed this with it. Basically, let's say that you had an idea of, let's go back to what I mentioned earlier with Super Quest Saga and that crystalline planet. Say something to the effect of, I'm running D&D, blah, blah, blah. I want to world build, and I have a crystal planet, and I need to know some cool things that my players would see while they're on it, and let it tell you what would be on there. This is as expandable as you want. All right. Thank you very much for joining me here on Dungeons and Drams, and I'll talk to you next week. Cheers.